Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the flashing alert on his control panel. The lunar outpost's sensors had picked up something strange, an energy signature unlike anything he'd seen in his 5 years as the station's maintenance engineer. "That's odd," he muttered, adjusting his reading glasses. The signature was moving fast, too fast for a normal spacecraft, and it was headed straight for the outpost. The lunar night stretched endlessly through his window, stars twinkling against the black void. At 35, Marcus had grown used to the isolation of his posting. The Earth hummed like a blue marble in the distance, beautiful but remote. Most days, his only company was the hum of machinery and occasional radio chats with supply ships. The alert suddenly changed from yellow to red. Whatever was approaching had just dropped out of what seemed like faster-than-light travel, and it wasn't slowing down enough for a safe landing. Marcus grabbed his tablet and ran to the observation dome. Through the reinforced glass, he spotted it, a sleek silver vessel, about 3 times the size of a regular shuttle. Its hull gleamed strangely in the starlight, made of some material he'd never seen before. But what caught his attention were the angry red streaks along its side, clear signs of damage from what looked like an asteroid hit. "Control to approaching vessel," he called through the emergency channel. "You're coming in too hot. Adjust your trajectory by 15 degrees east and reduce speed." For a moment, there was only static. Then, to his surprise, a clear female voice responded in perfect English. "Understood, lunar station. Attempting course correction." The ship's engines flared brilliantly as it struggled to slow down. Marcus watched, his heart in his throat, as the vessel managed a rough but controlled landing on the designated emergency pad about 100 meters from the main airlock. Following protocol, Marcus suited up in his EVA gear. He might be just a maintenance engineer, but he was also the station's first responder for emergencies. As he walked across the dusty lunar surface, the ship's airlock cycled open. What emerged made him stop in his tracks. 3 figures stepped out, all wearing sleek spacesuits that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. But it wasn't their advanced gear that shocked him. It was their height. Even accounting for the low gravity, they had to be at least 8 feet tall. As they removed their helmets, Marcus saw their skin had a silvery sheen, and their features were elegantly elongated, almost ethereal. They were all women, carrying themselves with a regal bearing that made Marcus suddenly conscious of his oil-stained maintenance uniform under his EVA suit. "I am Commander Naira of the Valorian Defense Fleet," the tallest one announced through what must have been a universal translator. Her voice carried the same aristocratic tone he'd heard over the radio. "We require immediate assistance." Marcus noticed how she seemed to look down her nose at him. And not just because of her height. There was something in her expression that suggested she found asking for help distasteful, especially from someone like him. "Marcus Chen," he replied simply, trying to hide his amazement. "Maintenance engineer. What seems to be the problem?" The youngest-looking of the 3 stepped forward eagerly, but Commander Nira held up a hand to stop her. "Our quantum drive sustained damage during an unexpected asteroid field encounter. We require repairs before we can continue our journey." Marcus nodded, already noting the sophisticated technology visible even from the ship's exterior. This was way beyond Earth's current capabilities, but something about the damage pattern looked workable. Besides, engineering problems always came down to basic principles, no matter how advanced the tech. "Let's take a look," he said professionally, even as his mind raced with excitement. "Follow me to the airlock, and we can discuss the details inside." As they walked toward the station, Marcus couldn't help but smile behind his helmet. This ordinary lunar night had just become the most interesting shift of his career. Inside the lunar station's brightly lit meeting room, Marcus tried not to stare at his unusual visitors. The 3 Valorian women had to duck to enter through the human-sized doorway, and the standard chairs were comically small for their tall frames. Commander Naira remained standing, her silvery face locked in an expression of barely hidden discomfort. "So," Marcus said, pulling up the station's diagnostic display, Tell me more about this quantum drive of yours. The youngest Valorian, who had introduced herself as Engineer Lyra, started to speak, but was again silenced by a sharp look from her commander. Our quantum drive technology, Commander Nera said slowly, as if explaining to a child, is far beyond your current understanding. We passed 17 repair stations on our way here, but our scanners detected unusual energy patterns from your facility. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Unusual how? Your station appears to be experimenting with primitive but interesting particle acceleration methods. The commander's tone softened slightly. We thought perhaps, despite your limited development, you might have some practical knowledge that could be useful. Marcus hid a smile. He knew exactly what they detected, his personal project of modifying the station's backup generators for better efficiency. It wasn't exactly cutting-edge science, but it had caught their attention. Well, he said, pulling out his tablet, why don't you show me the damage, and we'll see if this primitive engineer can help. The third Valorian, who hadn't spoken yet, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Commander Nera shot her a disapproving look before projecting a hologram from a device on her wrist. The image showed their ship's quantum drive, a complex array of crystalline structures and pulsing energy conduits. Marcus whistled softly. The technology was incredible, but the problem was obvious to his experienced eye. Your primary containment matrix is cracked, he said, pointing to a hairline fracture in one of the crystals. And that's causing a cascade failure in these power regulators here and here. All three Valorians stared at him in surprise. That's correct, Lyra said, earning another glare from her commander. But the crystalline matrix is grown from materials that only exist on our homeworld. We can't simply replace it. Marcus leaned back in his chair, mind already working on the problem. Maybe we don't need to replace it. See this pattern here? He traced the fracture line with his finger. It's following the crystal's natural stress points. If we reinforce these junctions with a high-temperature ceramic composite, we might be able to stabilize it enough for you to reach home. Ceramic? Commander Nera's voice dripped with skepticism. You propose to repair our quantum drive with pottery. Not exactly, Marcus replied patiently. The lunar soil contains elements we can process into a material strong enough to handle the energy flow. It won't be pretty, but it should work. Should. The commander's silver eyes narrowed. You expect us to trust our lives to a primitive repair material and your intuition. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Commander, right now your choices are to trust this primitive engineer or wait here until your people send a rescue ship. How long would that take? A moment of tense silence followed. The three Valorians exchanged glances, having some kind of silent conversation. Finally, Commander Nera's shoulders dropped slightly. 3 standard months, she admitted reluctantly. Our location is somewhat outside our usual patrol routes. Then I suggest we get started, Marcus said, standing up. I'll need about a week to gather the materials and make the repairs. You're welcome to observe the whole process. A week? Lyra asked, obvious interest in her voice. You can synthesize suitable materials that quickly. Engineer Lyra, Commander Nera said sharply, remember your position. But Marcus had seen the spark of curiosity in the young Valorian's eyes. Despite their advanced technology, these aliens might learn something from his primitive methods after all. Let me show you to your quarters, he said diplomatically. We can start fresh in the morning. And don't worry, I adjusted the bed lengths as soon as I saw how tall you were. This time, he definitely saw the third Valorian hide a smile. The next morning, Marcus stood in front of the Valorian ship's open maintenance hatch, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The quantum drive's internal chamber glowed with a soft blue light, casting strange shadows on the walls. He had stripped down to his station coveralls, due to the heat the system was generating. Fascinating, he muttered, scanning the damaged crystal matrix with his tablet. Behind him, all three Valorians watched his every move like hawks. Please do not touch anything without permission, Commander Nera said for the third time. One wrong move could cause a quantum cascade failure that would turn this whole area into a very small black hole. Marcus finished, not looking up from his readings. Yes, Commander, I can see the warning signs clearly enough. Engineer Lyra stepped forward, her silver face showing obvious surprise. You can read our warning markers. The symbols are similar to standard radiation warnings. Different design, same basic meaning. Marcus pointed to a pulsing red glyph, like this one here. Universal symbol for "this will kill you" in any language. The third Valorian, who had finally introduced herself as Security Officer Venna, made that sound again that might have been a laugh. Marcus pulled out a small device from his toolkit. Now I'm going to try something unconventional. I've modified this sonic mapper toe. A sonic mapper? Commander Nera interrupted. That's mining equipment. This is a precision quantum drive, not a rock face. True, Marcus said patiently, but the principle is the same. We need to understand exactly how this crack is affecting the crystal's internal structure. The sonic waves will show us the stress patterns without risking further damage. Lyra's eyes widened with understanding, like a medical scan for the crystal matrix. That's actually quite clever. The commander shot her young engineer a warning look, but Marcus had already started the scan. The device hummed softly, sending invisible waves through the damaged crystal. On his tablet, a three-dimensional image began to form. There, he said after a few minutes, pointing to the display. See these fault lines? They're spreading faster than they appear on the surface. My original repair plan won't be enough. The Valorians crowded around his tablet, their height making him feel like he was in a forest of silver trees. Even Commander Nera looked concerned. Can it be repaired at all? She asked, her usual condescension replaced by genuine worry. Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Yes, but it's going to be tricky. We need to stabilize the entire matrix, not just patch the visible crack. I'll need to synthesize a more complex composite material, and we'll have to modify one of my particle accelerator coils to cure it properly. Modify your equipment. Commander Nera frowned. That seems unnecessary. Actually, Lyra interjected, studying the scan intently. I think I see what he means. The composite needs to be quantum aligned before application, or it won't bond properly with the crystal structure. Marcus nodded, pleased by her quick understanding. Exactly. It will take longer, probably the full week I estimated, but it's our best chance for a permanent repair. And you're certain you can do this? Commander Nera asked, looking between the damaged drive and Marcus's confident face. Commander, Marcus said with a slight smile, I've spent 5 years keeping this station running with limited supplies and occasional help. Trust me, you learn to think creatively when replacement parts are 3 months away. Security Officer Venna stepped forward. Commander, I believe we should trust his judgment. His understanding of the principles involved is surprisingly adequate. High praise indeed, Marcus said dryly, already making calculations on his tablet. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to start modifying that particle accelerator. Engineer Lyra, would you like to assist? An extra pair of hands would be helpful, especially ones that can reach the high spots. Lyra looked eagerly at her commander, who sighed in resignation. Very well. But observe only, engineer. Do not interfere with his methods. As Marcus led Lyra toward his workshop, he could have sworn he heard Venna whisper to her commander, perhaps these humans aren't quite as primitive as we thought. So, you really live for only 80 Earth years? Lyra asked, carefully holding a power conduit steady while Marcus worked underneath it. They were in his workshop, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects. Give or take, Marcus replied, making delicate adjustments to the particle accelerator coil. Some people live longer, some shorter. Why? How long do Valorians live? About 500 of your years, Lyra said, though Commander Nera is only 200 and still considers herself young. Marcus whistled, sliding out from under the machinery to look at her. 200 years. That explains a lot about your people's attitude toward us primitive humans. 3 days had passed since they'd started the repairs, and the workshop had become their main meeting place. Commander Naira and Officer Venna were in the observation room, monitoring their ship's systems. "What do you mean?" Lyra asked, tilting her head curiously. Marcus wiped his hands on a cloth, considering his words. "Well, think about it. In the time it takes one Valorian to finish their basic education, multiple generations of humans are born, live, and die. Yet look how far we've come in such a short time." He gestured around the workshop. 100 years ago, we were still trying to figure out powered flight. Now we have lunar bases and particle accelerators. Imagine what we'll achieve in another 100 years. Lyra's silver eyes widened with understanding. We never thought about it that way. Our progress has always been so measured, so careful. She looked at the modified accelerator coil with new appreciation. Is that why you're so willing to try unconventional solutions? When you only have 80 years, you learn to make the most of them, Marcus said with a smile. He picked up his tablet, checking the latest calculations. Sometimes having less time makes you more creative. A comfortable silence fell as they both worked. Marcus had discovered that despite her initial reserve, Lyra was a quick learner and genuinely interested in his repair methods. She asked intelligent questions and offered insights that helped him refine his approach. "Would you like to try some Earth food?" Marcus asked suddenly. "The station's synthesizer isn't great, but it makes a decent pizza." "Pizza." Lyra pronounced the word carefully. "Is that a traditional Earth dish?" "It's a favorite among station engineers," Marcus said with a laugh. "Come on, we need a break anyway. The composite material needs another hour to cure." In the station's small dining area, Marcus watched with amusement as Lyra examined her first slice of pizza from every angle before taking a careful bite. Her eyes lit up. "This is surprisingly good," she exclaimed. "The combination of flavors is fascinating. Our food is much more regulated." "Regulated food." Marcus made a face. "That sounds boring." "Efficient," Lyra corrected, but she was smiling. "Though I'm beginning to see that efficient isn't always better." From the doorway came a slight cough. They turned to see Officer Venna standing there, trying to hide her own curiosity. "The commander sent me to check on your progress," she said, but her eyes were fixed on the pizza. "Would you like to join us?" Marcus offered, pushing the plate toward her. "There's plenty." Venna hesitated for just a moment before sitting down, having to fold her long legs carefully under the human-sized table. "Don't tell the commander," she said, reaching for a slice, "but I've been wanting to try Earth food since we arrived. Everything here is so different from what we're used to." "Different isn't always bad," Lyra said softly, watching Marcus adjust the food synthesizer settings. "Sometimes it's exactly what you need." Marcus pretended not to notice the meaningful look that passed between the two Valorians. Instead, he focused on making more pizza, thinking how sharing a simple meal could bridge even the widest cultural gaps. The warning alarms blared through the lunar station without warning. Marcus was jolted awake from his short nap at his workbench, tools scattered around him. His tablet was flashing red with urgent alerts. No, he muttered, running toward the Valorian ship. Commander Naira and her crew were already there, their usually composed faces showing clear panic. "The quantum matrix is destabilizing." Lyra shouted over the alarms. Her silver hands flew over their ship's control panel, but nothing seemed to help. "The crack is spreading faster than we predicted." Marcus pushed past them into the engine room, his tablet displaying readings that made his heart race. The damaged crystal was pulsing with an angry purple light now, instead of its usual soft blue. Energy readings were off the charts. "Everyone out," Commander Nera ordered. "If the containment fails, this whole section of the station could be lost." But Marcus stood his ground, studying the readings intently. "Wait," he said, his mind racing. "I might have an idea." "There's no time for human experiments." Commander Nera grabbed his arm. trying to pull him away. Despite the crisis, he noticed she was actually trying to save him. The Matrix is going to collapse. Just give me 2 minutes, Marcus insisted, pulling free. He ran to his modified particle accelerator, the one they'd been using to cure the composite material. Lyra, I need your help. The young Valorian engineer hesitated for only a second before joining him, ignoring her commander's shout of protest. The quantum field is unraveling, she said, watching the readings grow worse. Even if we had a replacement crystal, we couldn't stabilize it in time. We don't need to replace it, Marcus said, quickly rewiring the accelerator. We're going to give it a shock. A shock? Officer Venna asked from the doorway. Like defibrillating a heart. Exactly. Marcus connected the last wire. The crystal's quantum field is like a rhythm. Right now, that rhythm is chaotic. But if we hit it with exactly the right frequency, understanding dawned on Lyra's face. We could force it back into its normal pattern. But the power required will come from the station's backup generators, Marcus finished. All of them. Commander Nera stepped forward. You're talking about putting your entire station at risk to save our ship. To save all of us, Marcus corrected, not looking up from his work. If that matrix collapses, it won't matter where we are in the station. He finished the connections and turned to face her. Commander, I need your authorization to interface with your ship's systems. We have maybe 30 seconds to try this. The alarms were getting louder. The purple light from the engine room was now bright enough to cast shadows. Commander Nera looked at her crew, then at the human engineer who was their only hope. Do it, she commanded. Marcus's fingers flew over his tablet, connecting the station's power grid to his modified accelerator. Lyra, watch the phase variance. Tell me when it peaks. The lights in the station dimmed as power was diverted. The crystal's angry purple glow intensified. Peak in 5 seconds. Lyra called out. 4, 3, 2. Here goes everything, Marcus muttered, and hit the activation switch. A blinding flash filled the room. The sound of energy discharge was deafening. For one terrible moment, everything went dark. Then, slowly, the emergency lights came back on. In the engine room, the quantum crystal glowed with its original, soft blue light. Matrix stabilizing, Lyra reported, her voice shaking with relief. Quantum field returning to normal parameters. It actually worked. Marcus slumped against the wall, exhausted but smiling. Of course it worked. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Commander Nera stared at him, then at her restored ship, then back at him. For the first time since they'd landed, she gave him a genuine smile. Perhaps, she said slowly, we have underestimated what humans can achieve in their short lives. Maybe, Marcus replied with a tired grin. You just needed to see us under pressure. The day after the crisis, Marcus stood in the Valorian ship's engine room with all 3 aliens, running final diagnostics on the quantum drive. The crystal matrix hummed peacefully, its blue glow even stronger than before. These readings can't be right, Lyra said, checking her instruments for the 3rd time. The efficiency rating is 15% higher than factory specifications. Marcus leaned over to look at her display, having to stand on tiptoes to see the screen held by the tall Valorian. That tracks with what I'm seeing. The quantum shock seems to have realigned the crystal structure, like annealing metal, but at a quantum level. Commander Nera crossed her arms, her silver face showing both confusion and admiration. In all our centuries of quantum drive development, no one ever considered using a controlled shock to repair a damaged matrix. That's probably because it was a crazy idea that could have blown up the station, Marcus said with a grin. But sometimes crazy ideas are the best ones. Officer Venna, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. Perhaps that is what our readings detected when we chose this station for emergency landing. Not just the particle accelerator, but, she paused, searching for the right words, the human capacity for unconventional thinking. You mean our tendency to try crazy things when our backs are against the wall. Marcus joked, but Lyra was nodding enthusiastically. That's exactly it, the young engineer exclaimed. Our training teaches us to follow established procedures, to never deviate from proven methods. But you? She gestured at the modified equipment Marcus had used. You saw possibilities we couldn't even imagine. Marcus shrugged, trying to hide how pleased he felt at their praise. When you only live 80 years, you learn to take calculated risks. Besides, I had a good feeling about the theory. A good feeling. Commander Naira raised one elegant eyebrow. You risked everything on a feeling. Not just a feeling, Marcus explained, pulling up the mathematical models on his tablet. See these patterns. They reminded me of experiments we did with harmonics in engineering school. Different scale, same principle. Sometimes you need to step back and look at old problems in new ways. The commander studied the equations, her expression thoughtful. Our engineers would never have made this connection. We're too specialized, too focused on quantum mechanics alone. That's the advantage of being primitive, Marcus said with a wink at Lyra. We have to understand a bit of everything just to keep things running. Which is why, Commander Naira said formally, straightening to her full height, I am officially modifying my report to the Valorian High Command. Instead of merely documenting an emergency repair, I will be recommending a full investigation into human engineering methods. Marcus blinked in surprise. Really? Indeed, she continued. Your solution not only repaired our drive but improved it. That suggests humans possess unique insights our own engineers could learn from. Lyra could barely contain her excitement. Commander, does this mean? Yes, Engineer Lyra. You have my permission to document the entire repair process, including the humans' unconventional methods. The commander's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. After all, how can we call ourselves advanced if we're too proud to learn from others? Officer Venna laid a hand on Marcus's shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle despite her size. It seems we owe you more than just repairs, Marcus Chen. You helped us see beyond our own assumptions, Lyra added, her silver eyes shining. That's worth more than any technical improvement. Marcus looked around at these towering, advanced aliens who had arrived at his station just days ago, looking down their noses at primitive humans. Now they were talking about learning from Earth's engineers. Well, he said with a smile, I guess this means I should start writing the user manual for quantum matrix shock therapy. For the first time, all three Valorians laughed together, the sound echoing through the engine room like music. Marcus sat in the station's meeting room, feeling slightly nervous as the three Valorians stood before him. They had asked for a formal meeting before their departure, and something about their serious expressions made him wonder what was coming. Commander Naira stepped forward, her silver face unreadable. Marcus Chen, we have been discussing your contribution to our mission, and we have reached a decision that requires your attention. Sounds serious, Marcus said, trying to keep his tone light. I already said you don't need to pay me extra for the efficiency improvement. This is not about payment, Officer Venna said. This is about the future. Lyra could barely contain her excitement, practically bouncing on her toes despite the commander's warning glance. As you know, Commander Naira continued formally, the Valorian Defense Fleet has never established an official exchange program with Earth or any other emerging civilization. Our policy has always been to maintain technological superiority through isolation. Marcus nodded slowly. He had figured as much from their initial attitude. However, the commander's voice softened slightly. Recent events have caused us to reconsider this policy. Your innovative solution to our crisis has demonstrated that there is much we could learn from humans, despite your shorter development period. What Commander Naira is trying to say, Lyra burst out, unable to contain herself any longer, is that we want to establish Earth's first Valorian engineering exchange program. Engineer Lyra, the commander sighed. I was building up to that. Marcus sat up straighter. An exchange program? You mean like sharing technology? Within reasonable limits, Officer Venna clarified. We would establish a formal partnership, allowing select human engineers to study Valorian technology while we learn your unique problem-solving methods. And, Lyra added, her silver eyes bright with excitement, I volunteered to stay behind as the first Valorian representative. Marcus looked at Commander Nira in surprise. You're okay with this? The commander's face softened into a genuine smile. Engineer Lyra made a compelling argument. She pointed out that your crazy solution would never have worked without her understanding of quantum mechanics. Together, you two represent the perfect blend of innovation and expertise. The High Command has already approved the preliminary proposal, Officer Venna added. They were particularly interested in the efficiency improvements you achieved. Marcus sat back, his mind racing with possibilities. So, what exactly would this exchange program involve? You would be its founding director, Commander Nira explained. Working with Engineer Lyra, you would establish protocols for sharing knowledge between our species. Other human engineers would be gradually introduced to the program, and more Valorian technicians would join as needed. Of course, Officer Venna added with a slight smile, we would need to modify some of the station's facilities to accommodate Valorian height requirements. Marcus laughed, remembering how they had to duck through every doorway. I think we can manage that. He looked at Lyra, who was practically glowing with anticipation. You're really sure about staying? Are you kidding? Lyra exclaimed. The chance to learn human engineering methods firsthand. To see how you turn crazy ideas into brilliant solutions. I couldn't ask for a better assignment. Commander Nira cleared her throat. The offer requires your acceptance, Marcus Chen. Will you help us bridge the gap between our civilizations? Marcus stood up, looking at each of them in turn. These aliens who had arrived viewing humans as primitives were now offering him the chance to make history. But more than that, they were offering friendship and mutual respect. Well, he said with a grin, I suppose someone needs to teach you advanced aliens how to think outside the box. The commander extended her hand in a perfect imitation of a human handshake. Then we are agreed. Welcome to the future, Director Chen. 3 months after the Valorian ship's emergency landing, Marcus stood in the newly renovated lunar station control room. The ceiling had been raised to accommodate Valorian height, and new holographic displays filled the air with colorful data streams. Energy efficiency up another 5%. Lyra announced proudly, her silver face reflecting the blue glow of the screens. Your crazy modifications to our quantum field harmonics are working better than expected. Marcus grinned at his Valorian colleague. In the time since Commander Nira and Officer Venna had departed, Lyra had become not just a valuable partner, but a close friend. Her enthusiasm for learning primitive human engineering matched his fascination with Valorian technology. Speaking of crazy, he said, checking his tablet, we've got another visitor arriving in about an hour. Apparently, word is spreading about our little operation here. The incoming ship belonged to the Centaurians, another advanced species that had previously shown little interest in human engineering. But that was changing rapidly. That makes 3 different alien species this month. Lyra noted. The commander will be pleased when she arrives next week. Her last transmission said the High Command is amazed by our progress. As if on cue, one of the human engineers who had recently joined the program rushed into the control room. Director Chen, the new quantum thermal exchanger is ready for testing. Marcus smiled at the young engineer's excitement. The project was a perfect example of human-Valorian collaboration, Earth materials and ingenuity combined with Valorian quantum technology. Let's see it then, he said, following the engineer to the testing chamber. Lyra had to duck slightly through the doorway. They hadn't quite finished all the renovations yet. The device on the testing bench looked deceptively simple, but Marcus knew it represented hundreds of hours of collaborative work. If successful, it would revolutionize energy production on Earth, while proving that humans could adapt and improve even the most advanced alien technology. You know, Lyra said softly as they watched the test preparations, when we first landed here, I never imagined this would be my new home. Marcus glanced at her. Any regrets? Only that we didn't crash here sooner, she replied with a laugh. Though the commander insists it wasn't actually a crash landing. The test began, and both of them fell silent as energy readings appeared on their screens. The numbers kept climbing steadily, far exceeding their initial projections. It works, the young engineer shouted. The efficiency rating is off the charts. Marcus and Lyra exchanged proud looks. Another successful fusion of their different approaches to engineering. Later that evening, they stood in the observation dome, watching Earth hang like a blue jewel in the black sky. The station's new quantum-powered systems hummed quietly in the background. Commander Naira sent another message today, Lyra said. She's bringing 3 more Valorian engineers with her next week, and apparently the Arcturian Science Council has requested permission to send observers. Marcus shook his head in amazement. All because their quantum drive broke down in just the right place at just the right time. No, Lyra corrected him. All because a primitive human engineer was willing to try something crazy to help some stuck-up aliens who looked down on him. Well, when you put it that way, Marcus laughed. Though you weren't so stuck-up. I was just better at hiding it, she admitted with a smile. But you taught us all something important. Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. Through the dome's window, they could see the lights of the expanding station complex. What had started as a simple repair job had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, each learning from the other, breaking down barriers of prejudice and pride with each new discovery. So, Marcus said, ready to try another crazy idea tomorrow. Lyra's silver eyes sparkled with excitement. Always, Director Chen. Always. Above them, the stars twinkled with promise, each one representing new horizons waiting to be explored by this unlikely partnership of human innovation and alien technology.